In this edition, we focus on policy, governance, and development, the linkages between them, how one affects the other. I'll be talking to a development expert with global experience on these issues. Enjoy the program. You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and my name is still Okweyemi Agbaje. And like I said, we're talking policy, governance, and development. And my guest is uniquely positioned to discuss these issues. He's the regional coordinator for the Department for International Development of the UK government. He has a background for over 7 years in DFID. He's worked as a consultant with both the European Commission and the World Bank. He's a lawyer, he's an economist, he's an information scientist. My guest is Sina Fagbenro-Bryo. You're welcome to the Policy Council.
Thank you very much.
How did you
for having me.
acquire these? Tell us about your career. How did you get to this point?
Well, pretty much, general quest for knowledge.
Okay.
And at the same time, a bit of my background also sort of directed me. My father was a lawyer.
Okay.
But my first degree was in economics.
Okay.
And I sort of thoroughly enjoyed economics, but inevitably I had to read law, but sometime in 1994, 95, I just got a sense that the world was making a turn, particularly with regard to information and information use. And I had a choice in terms of going to study a master's, either to study law or to do an MBA, something. But the opportunity came on this new course to study a master's in information science, which basically was the management of information for decision making. And they opened the Africa Regional Center for Information Science in the University of Ibadan, and I had the good fortune of going in there and doing it. And I specialized in development information.
Okay. You had been in development before?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay. I mean, I'd worked on policy and policy development before then, and so it was a natural progression to study that.
Interesting. Yeah. Tell me, you've been for some time the Southwest Regional Coordinator at DFID. What's your assessment of governance in the southwest of Nigeria?
Well, I think it's going at the trajectory is it's an upward trajectory. Several years of military regime in Lagos, we could see that there seems to be a radiation of what happens is that Nigerian state practice. So what we see as a trend, especially over the past, particularly over the past 4 or 5 years, is that some of the lessons that have been learned in Lagos, we've had, before you can have good governance is a two-sided affair. There's the supply side and there's the demand side. So as much as it is the responsibility of government to provide, yes, it is also the responsibility of civil society and the public, which is also made up of the press, the media, to continue to insist and push the bar for government. And I think in the Southwest generally, people tend to hold their governments more to account, and I think this trajectory we're seeing it going, forward. So I would say it's pretty positive.
I know this is not your mandate, but I'm going to put you on the spot because you've touched on something that I have noticed as well. So there's a tradition you are suggesting in the Southwest. There's some social democratic, there's some traditions of accountability that government has to the people, which even for the worst governor tends to impose some minimum standards.
Well, yes. I mean, this is where you have a lot of agitators, and some of these things can have a positive effect on government. Governments who are ready to take criticisms seriously rather than personally will take advantage of that kind of atmosphere. The early education around these parts the fact that Lagos was the hub of the nationalism in the first place. It is where you have majority of the press. It is where you have the preponderance of civil society. So that itself has created an atmosphere around the region, which I believe some of the governments have taken advantage of, and where they have not deliberately taken advantage of that, they have been forced to move in that direction. So basically what we have here, for me, tends to be a strong sense of social contract.
Now, where I was going to put you on the spot is to then contrast with the rest of the regions in the country.
Well, I believe each region has certain capabilities and certain advantages over the other. In the social contracting...
Let me be very blunt, Shino.
Okay.
I've recently analyzed regional governance in Nigeria. In fact, I'm developing a paper on it. And I wonder, is there something, and I'm going to be fairly blunt because I want us to develop as a country, is there something that accounts for the fact that once the South-South had Ibori, had Alameseya, had Peter Odili, had Lucky Igbenedion? I mean, you couldn't have...
Mentioning those names. Well, they have, according to the public records, it will appear they had...
Ibori is a convict. Alameseya is a fugitive from justice.
Well, it's rather unfortunate. But we do know that in the South-South, you have some extremely brilliant people. And you've had some people who have contributed tremendously to this country. If particularly had people who have performed less than expected, it could either be by happenstance, it could either be because
the political process
of the political environment at a particular time. You know, it could also be, yes, the political process that threw them
the
out.
social system.
Yes, but I do not believe that it makes the people of the South
certainly not
any less committed to their own development and good governance.
And indeed, I think there's some improvement.
Oh, there is.
Let's take a time out. You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and I have a development expert, the regional coordinator of the DFID in the southwest region of Nigeria, Mr. Sina Fagbenro-Bryo. Now, we were talking about, let's go back to the southwest and your work you do for them. In what ways does DFID support these regional governments?
Okay. Basically, DFID as an agency cannot be in all states. But in the southwest, you know, our focal state is Lagos.
Okay.
And we do quite a bit of work in terms of providing support and partnership in governance, in human development, in economic growth. And we've had a relationship with Lagos for a while. However, one of our mandates is to ensure that whatever lessons are learned, whatever reforms prove successful, we should as much as possible support their radiation within the region and within contiguous states. And DFID, through my office particularly, we sort of facilitate that radiation, we facilitate that lessons sharing, we provide platforms whereby policies that are pro-development, that are pro-poor, can actually be either infused or be developed and enhanced in those other states. Now, one of the ways we do this, because for you to either change policy or to develop policy in a particular direction, the first thing you need is the evidence. Why is what we were doing not working, and why do we need to change policy? When you want to develop policy too, you want to look at what are the implementation parameters of that policy. So what we do is, first of all, facilitate activities that provide evidence and what does not work. We facilitate from my office the annual MDG conference, the Southwest Millennium Development Goals Conference annually, and we've been doing this since 2010. The next one we expect to have either November or December for 2013. But incidentally, DFID manages Kwara State through Lagos.
Okay.
So we count Kwara State as part of Southwest. So we do Southwest plus Kwara.
Okay.
So in all our conferences and all these activities that I want to relate, Kwara State is involved. So we do things like the MDG conference, for example. We look at MDG. We take each state as if it is a country. And then we map and see the MDG attainment level of each state. Then we go to the forum and compare. At one particular time, we had actually drawn their attention to actually measuring MDGs themselves. Secondly, we looked at data availability comparatively with the states. The third conference, we looked at actual results, because you have in many states the perception that if you budget amounts, that means you have solved the problem. But we look beyond that. It's beyond the budget. The impact. So how to measure impact? The next phase of the MDG is going to look at MDG indicators. And also, we are going to commence a post-MDG discussion. Apart from the MDG, we've done things like debt management in the Southwest states. We've looked at the different ways in which each of the states have managed their debts. And we've discovered where certain states are weak, where certain states are poor. We've created a platform where the weak will learn from the strong, you know, and it's a conference that usually involves the technocrats, the high-level technocrats.
Let me ask you a question, yes, particularly in terms of MDGs.
Yes.
What have you found in the Southwest in terms of compliance or attainment of the MDG goals?
Well,
that's one within the Southwest. And secondly, benchmarking, comparing the Southwest with the rest of the country.
Okay. To be honest, I mean, it's public knowledge that the Southwest state is quite well ahead in attainment of the MDGs, particularly in the health, education, access to you know, the gender issues. So what we do is that we have what we call a traffic light at the end of each assessment. And we have either the green, amber, or red, whether you're on track or off track. And if you compare what the Southwest has attained compared to those, it's quite ahead. Where the Southwest particularly is still low is in the area of particularly of malaria. Malaria, and I think there's, I can't put it all off my head, but there are one or two. But generally, by and large, apart from what the governors themselves have done, and might I say, I mean, DFID must take some of this credit. In the sense that we kept on putting the MDGs high on the agenda. You see, you have to keep the issue on the agenda. Number one, you get the people involved, you get the government involved, and an interlocutor like DFID
an independent
provides these states to provide the data which we discuss at a conference. And so we discuss it. So if your state, if you disagree with this, you provide the evidence that it is not so. So it is a totally technical discussion. And as I was saying, we've done debt management comparisons. We've done internal generated revenue for the Southwest states. And you know, about regions is that you see each region of the country has unique
endowments,
and peculiar both challenges, endowments. And it would be better for us if we aggregate those challenges so that we can focus. You know, when you want to address an issue or you want to solve a problem, it is better that you tailor-make the solution to fit the environment. In this country, there's no one-size-fits-all.
Excellent. So, let's take a short time out.
Who knows Abi better thing? Abi who know like better thing? All these fine things where they see so. Now money government they take do now. Abi, I think it's like, you know, I mean, excuse me, I did pay my tax. I did do a thing, I did pay my tax. Say you don't pay your own tax. If you pay your tax, I pay. Oh.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. Still the Policy Council, and I'm still having this conversation on policy, governance, and development with Mr. Sina Fagbenro-Bryo. He's the regional coordinator for the UK DFID, Department for International Development, in the southwestern Nigeria. So, Sina, let's continue this conversation. I know that the Southwest states who you work with have this development agenda for Western Nigeria, the Dawn document, and they've created a Dawn commission. Are you involved in that in any way?
Well, to the extent that we have, the Dawn has provided for us a platform whereby we can reach other states on an even keel without necessarily going to each state. I mean, we have been trying to do it in piecemeal before, but the Dawn, particularly when we looked at their agenda and we saw that the agenda was focused on development, it was focused on poverty alleviation, their agenda is consistent with
the
what
objectives of
it gives me. So it's easy for us to identify and associate with that. It also provides an opportunity for us to consider some of the issues that, you know, the National Planning Commission, for example, has tried to raise, that it is necessary to disaggregate some of the development indices of this country in order to actually address some of the issues, including some of the statistics like GDP and all these things. Because when we look at Nigeria as a whole, we misleads everybody. Yes, and we tend to miss out on the detail. And when you generalize and you are summary, you are not likely to have targeted impact. So the Dawn has provided an opportunity for us, and we are exploring ways right now to see how we can provide some support to that initiative. And well, I believe that DFID Abuja, that is my head office generally, will also be looking particularly towards other regions, giving that same opportunity. You know, particularly in the north, where the poverty indicators are
and that brings me to my next question. Leaving the Southwest, let's talk about the social reality of Nigeria. Based on the data I'm sure you see at DPID and that we see at the MBS and everywhere. Poverty, unemployment, insecurity, education. It seems we do have a social crisis in Nigeria.
We do, and you see the problem started long ago. The truth of the matter is that the most valuable resource of any nation is not the oil, nor the physical resources, nor the gold. It is actually the people. The human resource is the greatest resource. And unfortunately, Nigeria has fallen short of investing in its own people. And when you don't invest in people, you are likely to come out with results such as poverty, exclusion, you know, and all the challenges that we appear to be facing in the country today. We've also shot ourselves in the foot a bit because we've done something that is very unfortunate. We have tied revenue allocation and revenue disbursements to population, population size. So we have created inadvertently we have created an incentive for population growth without creating an incentive for population management. When you create an incentive for population growth and you don't create that incentive to manage that population or to manage its diversity, you get the kind of crisis you have here. So people are rushing to have more children to be able to get more money from the federal government, but are not considering education.
What's the role of, because you see, I go back to my point. I'm worried that when I see patterns, and like I said, I've been researching this. Governance, let's take the northeast of Nigeria. Governance in that region has consistently produced polio, VVF, Almajiri children, Boko Haram. There seems to be some underlying social phenomena that all this economic talk is not talking about. Perhaps we need to, and agencies like yours, or even those of us involved in this debate, perhaps we need to take this conversation to a more primal level. How do we influence the structure of this society before we can create development in that society? What do you think?
apart from the issue that is generally that we are all guilty of as Nigerians. We have failed to invest in people.
Yeah.
But the North has peculiar challenges.
Okay.
It is vast land. The northern borders are seriously porous. Now, talking about how to break this down, the issues in the northeast are different from the issues in the northwest.
Yes.
You will note that Boko Haram is not particularly pronounced in the northwest. And there is a reason, but nobody is digging down to see why. So I believe that conversations should come at a more manageable level, that, you know, on a regional level, for example.
Yeah.
All these
where there's
issues,
some patterns.
Where there are patterns.
And then where there's some scale.
And some commonality. So if you really want to discuss development in the northwest, you have to look at that.
Focus on their
regional pattern. Look at their issues. You discuss it against their, you know, their opportunities and challenges.
Let's take a time out and we'll be right back. You're welcome back. It's my final segment with Mr. Sina Fagbenro-Bryo, Regional Coordinator for the Southwest Region at the DFID, UK Department for International Development. Let's look at some final issues around governance. Yes. Budgets, fiscal transparency, yes. Procurement, yes. Service delivery. Yes. I know you've worked yes. with the country, with various states yes. on these issues. Yeah. What's your assessment where we are today?
Well, I think, you know, everybody says Nigeria has enough money. We're not rich considering our huge population, but we have enough money. I think the challenge is spending that money more effectively and more efficiently. And this is why financial management, our public financial management systems should be as efficient and as transparent as possible. The financial management, our financial management structure has two challenges. One, some of the systems are archaic and are not fit for purpose in this day and age. The second challenge is that there are leakages. You know, some malicious and some benign. Some, you know, not
inadvertent,
yes, inadvertent.
Inefficiency.
But now, the amount of savings that can be made by blocking some of the leakages is huge and humongous. And if you permit me to say, sir, one of the first things that Lagos did in 2000 was to commission two studies. It was a public financial management study and a public procurement study by the World Bank between 2001 and 2002. It was on the basis of this report that the reforms in Lagos State commenced.
Let me take your comment on the quality of our democracy and constitution and the agitation for a sovereign national conference.
A national conference is very much necessary. I mean, there should be a basis of discussion. However, I would say the sovereignty of a national conference will not be determined prior to the conference, but after the conference. A conference cannot be sovereign until the process is seen to have been open, inclusive, and sovereign. So it is the process that makes the sovereignty.
That will determine the
not
outcome.
The sovereignty cannot be ab initio from Jump Street.
Because even if you bestow sovereignty ab initio, the process can be subverted.
Yes, exactly.
And the outcome can be illegitimate.
Absolutely.
In the eyes of the people.
Absolutely. So I will encourage those who are asking for a sovereign national conference to ask for a national conference. If they conduct it well, it will end up as a sovereign one.
Let me take your final comment on
please.
aid.
Okay.
This debate around aid.
Fantastic.
Does Africa benefit from it? Does it constrain our thinking?
You see,
are you, by aiding us, simply making us incompetent?
Someone who offers you help will offer you help. It is up to you to make the best of that help. The help may not be the best, but you can take something out of it. There's a Yoruba proverb which says that, if you mind if I say that,
no, please go ahead.
Which means that if someone offers the aid, it is for you to use it well. So the Paris Declaration requires something: mutual accountability. Governments that are recipients of aid should take ownership of the aid. They should take ownership of the results. They should be clear as to what they want, what they need. And this is what the Paris Declaration actually prescribes. Aid is a basis for partnership between a donor, as it were, and a beneficiary. And at times the aid, especially when it is just technical aid, just provides international best practices, you know, and targets. MDG, for example, is a benchmark that it has given countries an opportunity to say, okay, this is a target, let's follow it. Right or wrong, pursue something that is positive. I mean, there's no perfect situation anywhere, but I think it's a basis for partnership.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming on the Policy Council.
It's a pleasure.
We'll be right back.
Thank you.
I have several takeaways from that interesting conversation. One, governance and policy must be based on facts, research, data, what my guest called evidence-based policy making. Secondly, we must deal with the social crisis that has bedeviled this nation. Human capital is the most important resource the country has, and we must focus on people, educating them, giving them health, giving them capacity for self-development, and nurturing their competencies and capabilities. Thirdly, aid can be good for you. It depends on what you do with it. It can be bad for you if you become dependent, but if you use it as a springboard to achieve development, it can be a positive phenomenon. My guest agrees with the need for a conference of Nigerians to discuss their future and to bestow legitimacy on their constitution. My guest also reminded us of the example of Lagos, how it has been a benchmark and an example for the diffusion of best practices. We can have more of Lagos. Finally, we must improve public financial management at the federal and at the state levels, even the local governments, so that the resources of the state can work for the generality of its people. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.